Well, New Zealand's world-first effort to eradicate the cattle disease Mycoplasma bovis has made significant progress, with the number of infected properties dropping to new lows. And this is 3 years to the day since it was first detected in New Zealand this week. 250 properties have been infected by the disease, and joining us now to discuss his thoughts on the progress is Dr. John Roche from MPI. Welcome to the program, and thank you for taking the time to join us. John?
Kia ora, Sarah. Thank you for allowing me on again. I obviously didn't do too badly the last time if you've left me back.
You're very, very popular last time, and unfortunately we can't take any questions from our audience, but we'll have to get you back on that as we continue to follow this closely and other things. Hey, so, I mean, under a lot of criticism, we are getting to new lows. How low do we go, and how far away are we from that ultimate eradication?
Well, ultimate eradication, obviously, we want to get down to zero, and we have to be zero for quite some time before we can declare that we're free of the disease. So, and there's still quite some time. So, not meaning to pour cold water on these announcements. It's fantastic. We're down to 4 confirmed infected properties. You know, compared with 25 last year, we've got less than 50 under a notice of direction, compared with almost 240 this time last year. You know, so extraordinary differences in numbers. Our estimated dissemination rate, which we talked about last time I was on, which is a measure of the number of infected farms during this quarter relative to the quarter beforehand, again is substantially below 1 and has remained below that. So all of the indications are really, really good that we're making progress towards ending the delimitation phase. So the delimiting phase, sorry. Now we're still somewhere between 6 and 12 months away from being sure of that, and delimiting is actually, you know, finding the cases that we know that we can find easily. Then the long, harder work begins, which is, you know, you've got very low prevalence in the community, and we're looking to find those last ones. Because, and why I say that's hard is it's harder to find them. And because of our farming systems and the way we move cattle around relative to other countries, there's a real risk that if we don't find those herds that are still remaining quickly, that they will infect other farms, and we'll still be inside in that tracing situation. So there's still a lot of hard work to be done, but the news is certainly very positive that we are where we are.
What type of influence does the particular seasons that are approaching us, such as calving and the transportation of calves to be reared, bring about fear in transmission?
Yeah, look, they do. So there's a couple of things there. So we still expect to find more infected herds as we bulk milk test through the spring. That's where the bacteria tends to shed at the greatest level, because animals are under stress, obviously, through that calving period. Their immune system becomes a little bit less effective than it is during established lactation, so diseases can take hold. And farmers will tell you that that's where they see the vast majority of infectious disease, be it mastitis, metritis, and even, you know, the metabolic diseases that we deal with at this time of the year. It also puts additional stress on the animals. So we expect to find more through that. Certainly, the movement of calves between properties is a great way of moving the disease if it's present on those properties. So again, all we can do is really appeal to all farmers on both sides of that receiving and passing on route of calves, that NATE is up to date, that we know where these animals are coming from, we know where they're going and when it happened, and that allows us to limit any potential spread.
So we're 3 years on. What do you believe 3 years on would have looked like if we didn't make the decision to eradicate?
Oh, it's really hard to say. Look, as you know, I dealt with Mycoplasma bovis on grazing farms in the United States during a previous life, and outbreaks were incredibly traumatic. Traumatic for us as farm owners, and traumatic for the people working on the farm. You know, where we were literally seeing an incurable mastitis run through the lactating herd, and of course, feeding that to calves and newborn animals with a poorly developed immune system. We were seeing big healthy calves almost die overnight for when you wouldn't expect them to. We certainly wouldn't expect them to from our history of farming in New Zealand. And so those types of outbreaks would be traumatic on the farms that have to go through them. And there would be an increased number of them because obviously you saw how many, we had 250 farms that have been infected, and that was us working hard to stop the disease. How many would have been infected if we hadn't gone into an eradication program is probably anybody's guess, but it would have been considerable considering the amount of movement of stock, the mixing of young stock on rearing properties, the mixing of dry stock in commercial dry operations, etc. I couldn't put a figure on it for you, but it wouldn't be a pleasant picture.
And lastly, from a biosecurity perspective, of course, we've also add on top COVID-19 from a human transmission. Do you believe that you've seen a real attitude change to on-farm and for any future diseases? I suppose that's the big confidence that we'd all like as an industry, that we're ready for the next thing.
Oh, look, I think we have, and hats off the farmer. I know Minister O'Connor said this in some of his communications over the last couple of days. This isn't an easy thing to do. We've got incredibly busy people doing long hours at key times of the year, juggling a huge number of balls, and we've thrown another ball into the mix here. Our NATE compliance has increased significantly over the period of 3 years. Farmers and government, we've all understood the value of NATE to a greater degree than we might have done at the start of this. So we are seeing better practices. But I would encourage farmers to work with their industry bodies, with Dairy NZ and Beef and Lamb. They've got great resources around good biosecurity practices, and how they interact with visitors coming onto their properties, all those types of things. These are basic bread and butter of stopping disease spreading onto your property. We will do our best at the border, but you've got a border around your property as well, and that's your kingdom. Let's protect it. Let's wrap a moat around it and make sure that the enemy doesn't get in.
Thank you so much, Dr. John Roche, Chief Scientist at Ministry for Primary Industries. And of course, the news is it's this week passes 3 years since the decision to eradicate M.Bovis.
This is Sarah's Country.